Have you ever wondered why some men, strong men, intelligent men, emotionally aware men, find themselves irresistibly drawn to a woman who ultimately devastates them? Not once, not accidentally, but repeatedly. On the surface, she doesn't appear grandiose. She isn't loud. She doesn't demand attention in obvious ways. In fact, she may seem soft-spoken, vulnerable, deep, almost fragile, and yet something about her pulls him in. It feels magnetic, it feels fated. It feels like he has finally met someone who truly understands him. But what he experiences as connection may actually be something far more complex. Because covert narcissism does not seduce through dominance. It seduces through mystery, through subtle emotional withdrawal, through vulnerability that feels intimate but is carefully controlled. The question is not why she behaves the way she does. The deeper question is, why does he feel unable to resist it? You see, attraction is rarely random. We do not fall in love with people simply because they are beautiful or charming. We are drawn to emotional experiences that feel familiar to our nervous system. Familiar does not mean healthy. Familiar means known. Many men who find themselves captivated by covertly narcissistic partners are not chasing toxicity consciously. They are responding to something ancient within them, a pattern formed long before they ever entered a romantic relationship. As boys, many learned that love had to be earned, that approval came through performance, that emotional closeness required attunement to someone else's moods. Perhaps affection was inconsistent, warm one moment, distant the next. Perhaps praise was subtle and conditional, given when they achieved, withheld when they expressed vulnerability. The child adapts. He learns to read emotional shifts carefully. He becomes attentive, responsible, strong. He senses when something is wrong and feels compelled to fix it. And when he meets a woman who is emotionally elusive, warm one day, withdrawn the next, his nervous system recognizes the rhythm, not as danger, as home. This is the part that is rarely spoken about. Covert narcissism often presents as woundedness, as quiet suffering, as someone who has been hurt deeply and needs understanding. And the empathic, responsible man feels called to step forward. He sees her pain, he senses her fragility. He believes his steadiness can heal her. But what he experiences as intimacy is often emotional intensity without true vulnerability. There is a difference. Intensity feels electric. It feels consuming. It feels profound. Intimacy feels safe, consistent, mutual. A covert narcissist may create cycles of closeness and distance that activate a man's attachment system powerfully. When she withdraws emotionally, he feels unsettled. When she returns with affection, relief floods his system. This intermittent reinforcement is neurologically potent. It creates craving, not because he is weak, but because his nervous system is seeking resolution, seeking stability, seeking the approval that once felt uncertain in childhood. He may find himself working harder for her love, explaining himself repeatedly, apologizing for things he does not fully understand, trying to decode her shifting moods. And each time she offers warmth again, it feels earned. Earned love feels more valuable than freely given love to someone who grew up believing affection must be achieved. But here is the quiet tragedy. What feels like deconnection may actually be a reenactment of early emotional dynamics. The unpredictable affection, the subtle criticism, the unspoken disappointment, the silent withdrawal. These experiences awaken something unresolved. The man is not addicted to her cruelty. He is attached to the hope of finally getting it right, finally being enough, finally stabilizing love. Covert narcissism often operates through victimhood, subtle guilt, and emotional ambiguity. She may rarely rage openly. Instead, she may express disappointment in ways that feel understated but piercing. She may withdraw without explanation. She may imply that he has failed her emotionally without clearly articulating needs. And he responds by trying harder, communicating more, sacrificing more. Because somewhere inside, there is a young boy who learned that love disappears when he disappoints. So he becomes vigilant. He becomes accommodating. He becomes hyper-attuned. What looks like irresistible attraction is often a trauma bond formed through familiar emotional unpredictability. It is not about weakness. It is about unresolved attachment. The nervous system does not seek what is good for us. It seeks what it knows. If love once felt conditional, then conditional affection will feel compelling. If closeness once required emotional labor, then emotionally complex partners will feel meaningful. Healthy, secure love can initially feel unfamiliar, even boring, because it does not activate the same intensity. There are no dramatic highs and lows, no desperate attempts to repair, no anxiety-fueled pursuit, just steadiness. And for someone conditioned to equate intensity with love, steadiness can feel empty, so he returns to what feels alive. Even if it wounds him, the deeper work is not to demonize the woman, nor to shame the man. It is to ask, what within him responds so strongly to this pattern? What early emotional blueprint is being replayed? When a man begins to see this clearly, not intellectually, but somatically, something shifts. He recognizes that what he interpreted as chemistry may have been activation. What he labeled passion may have been anxiety. What he called destiny may have been familiarity. And this awareness is not about blame. It is about freedom. Because once he understands that the pull is rooted in old survival strategies, he no longer needs to fight the attraction blindly. He can pause. He can notice. He can ask himself, does this feel safe, or does it feel familiar? Does this woman see me, or am I chasing being seen? Does this connection expand me, or does it keep me proving myself? The moment he asks those questions honestly, the spell begins to weaken. Not because the magnetism disappears instantly, but because consciousness enters the room. And when awareness replaces unconscious reenactment, a different kind of love becomes possible. A love that does not require earning. A love that does not depend on emotional unpredictability. A love where he is not trying to rescue, fix, or stabilize someone else's sense of self, but is simply allowed to exist fully, without performance. Understanding why men feel unable to resist covert narcissists is not about labeling one side as villain and the other as victim. It is about seeing the invisible thread that ties early emotional adaptation to adult attraction. And once that thread is seen, it can finally be released. The psychological magnetism of covert narcissism does not operate in obvious ways. It is subtle, quiet, almost invisible at first. There is no loud arrogance, no overt self-importance that immediately signals danger. Instead, there is something far more compelling. Emotional unpredictability wrapped in vulnerability. At the beginning, she may appear deeply sensitive, thoughtful, wounded in a way that invites protection rather than suspicion. She does not demand admiration openly, she evokes it. She does not insist on attention, she draws it naturally. There is often a softness, a sense of mystery, even a quiet sadness that feels intimate. And this is where the magnetism begins. Human beings are wired to respond to emotional uncertainty. When affection is consistent and secure, the nervous system relaxes. But when affection fluctuates, warmth one moment, distance the next, the nervous system becomes alert. It starts scanning, seeking clarity, seeking reassurance. Intermittent emotional availability is neurologically powerful. When someone offers closeness and then subtly withdraws, it activates pursuit. The mind begins to analyze, what changed? What did I miss? How do I restore that connection? This is not weakness, it is biology. Unpredictability creates heightened dopamine responses in the brain. The uncertainty itself becomes stimulating. The brief return of warmth feels intensely rewarding because it follows absence. Relief floods the system. Hope surges. The connection feels meaningful precisely because it feels fragile. Covert narcissism often operates through this cycle. There may be moments of deep eye contact, soulful conversation, emotional confession. It can feel like profound intimacy. Then, without clear explanation, there is emotional retreat. A subtle coldness, a delayed response, a shift in tone that is difficult to name but impossible to ignore. The man begins leaning in, trying harder, becoming more attentive, because the connection felt so real. The unpredictability keeps him engaged, not because he enjoys instability, but because his system is trying to stabilize it. He wants to return to that original closeness. That sense of being special, chosen, understood. Intensity is easily mistaken for depth. When emotions run high, when there is longing, confusion, passion, anxiety, it feels significant. It feels like something important is happening. But intensity is not the same as intimacy. Intimacy is steady, predictable. Safe intensity is volatile, electrifying, consuming. Covert narcissistic dynamics often create emotional intensity without sustainable intimacy. The relationship moves quickly into deep conversations, shared vulnerabilities, even trauma bonding. It can feel like two souls recognizing each other. But beneath that surface, emotional reciprocity is inconsistent. She may reveal pain, but rarely responsibility. She may express longing, but rarely commitment. She may imply deep connection, but subtly position herself as perpetually dissatisfied. This creates a powerful psychological hook, because when someone feels both close and just out of reach, desire intensifies. The mind fills in gaps. The heart tries to prove itself worthy of permanence. The magnetism is not purely about her personality, it is about the emotional rhythm she creates. Warmth, withdrawal, hope, doubt, closeness, distance. That rhythm keeps the attachment system activated, and once attachment is activated, logic becomes secondary. He may sense confusion, even discomfort. But the pull remains strong because uncertainty fuels investment. He wants resolution. He wants clarity. He wants to secure what feels almost secure. This is how emotional unpredictability becomes addictive. Not in a dramatic sense, but in a deeply psychological one. The covert narcissistic pattern thrives on subtle imbalance. Just enough affection to sustain hope. Just enough distance to create pursuit. Just enough vulnerability to evoke rescue instincts. Just enough ambiguity to keep questions alive. Over time, the relationship feels emotionally consuming, not because it is grounded in mutual growth, but because it keeps the nervous system oscillating between anxiety and relief. And when anxiety and relief cycle together repeatedly, attachment deepens rapidly. The magnetism, then, is not magic. It is the chemistry of uncertainty combined with the human longing for closeness. It is the power of unpredictability wrapped in emotional intimacy. And until that pattern is consciously recognized, it can feel impossible to resist. How childhood attachment wounds make men vulnerable to this dynamic is not a comfortable question, but it is an essential one, because attraction does not begin in adulthood. It begins in early relational experience. As children, we learn what love feels like, not what it should feel like, what it actually feels like in our home. If love was steady, emotionally available, and safe, the nervous system learns to associate closeness with calm. But if love was inconsistent, warm at times, distant at others, the nervous system adapts differently. Imagine a young boy who senses that his mother is sometimes affectionate and present, but other times overwhelmed, withdrawn, or emotionally unavailable. He does not blame her. Children rarely do. Instead, he assumes responsibility. He becomes more attentive, more pleasing, more careful. He learns to scan her mood. He learns that connection can disappear without warning. He learns that love must be maintained. This is not conscious. It is survival. The child's nervous system wires itself around unpredictability. It becomes hyper-aware of emotional shifts. It becomes sensitive to subtle withdrawal, and most importantly, it begins to equate longing with love, because when affection is inconsistent, closeness feels precious, rare, hard-won. Now fast forward. As an adult, this man may appear confident, capable, emotionally intelligent. But his attachment system still carries that early blueprint. When he meets a woman who is warm and engaging one moment, distant the next, something deep inside him activates. It feels familiar. Not necessarily comfortable, but familiar. Her subtle withdrawal does not immediately repel him, it pulls him in. It awakens the old strategy: try harder, understand more, fix it, earn it. If, as a child, he experienced emotional closeness that required performance, good grades, emotional maturity, being the strong one, then in adulthood he may unconsciously seek partners whose love feels conditional, because conditional love is what his nervous system recognizes as real. Secure love, in contrast, can feel foreign, even suspicious. If someone is consistently warm, consistently affirming, consistently available, part of him may not fully trust it. It does not activate the same urgency, and urgency has been mistaken for importance. This is how attachment wounds shape attraction. If a boy grew up needing to suppress vulnerability because emotional expression was dismissed or minimized, he may be drawn to a partner who subtly withholds emotional validation. But because he enjoys it, but because it mirrors his early experience, he may find himself explaining his feelings repeatedly, trying to be understood, working harder to feel seen. He is not chasing rejection. He is chasing resolution. He is trying to complete an emotional loop that began decades earlier. When covert narcissistic behavior introduces cycles of praise and subtle criticism, affection and withdrawal, approval and disappointment, it touches directly on unresolved attachment patterns. The man feels compelled to restore harmony, to bring back closeness, to regain that initial warmth, because somewhere deep inside, there is still a child who believed that love can disappear if he is not careful enough. Attachment wounds do not announce themselves loudly. They operate quietly, beneath awareness. They influence who feels magnetic, who feels exciting, who feels emotionally significant. We are often drawn not to what is healthiest, but to what promises to heal something unfinished. The tragedy is that the relationship rarely heals the wound. It often reopens it. The more unpredictable the affection, the more activated the attachment system becomes. And the more activated it becomes, the harder it is to step back and see clearly. This is not about weakness. It is about imprinting. The nervous system remembers the emotional climate of childhood. It remembers what closeness felt like. It remembers how connection was maintained. And until those early patterns are brought into awareness, they continue guiding adult relationships. What feels like irresistible chemistry is often a younger part of the self seeking familiarity, seeking reassurance, seeking the love that once felt uncertain. And without understanding that, the pattern simply repeats. The difference between intensity and intimacy is subtle, and yet it changes everything. Many men who find themselves unable to resist a covertly narcissistic partner describe the connection as electric, powerful. Unlike anything they have ever experienced, the conversations feel deep from the beginning. There is vulnerability, shared pain, late night confessions, long eye contact that seems to say more than words ever could. It feels profound. But intensity is not the same as intimacy. Intensity is fast, it is charged. It activates the nervous system. It creates urgency. You feel pulled in, consumed, preoccupied. Your thoughts circle around the person. You replay conversations. You analyze tone shifts. You wait for messages. You feel highs when they are warm and lows when they are distant. Intimacy, on the other hand, is slower. It is built gradually. It feels safe. You do not have to decode it. You do not have to earn it. It does not require performance or constant vigilance. It allows you to relax. Intensity often mimics depth because it triggers strong emotion, and we tend to equate strong emotion with meaningful connection. If it feels overwhelming, it must be important. If it keeps us awake at night, it must be love. But the body tells a different story. Intensity activates adrenaline and dopamine. There is anticipation, uncertainty, reward when affection returns after distance. The cycle of longing and relief becomes addictive. It feels alive because the nervous system is oscillating between activation and temporary calm. Intimacy activates oxytocin and safety. There is steadiness, predictability, emotional reciprocity. It may not feel dramatic, but it feels grounding. In relationships with covert narcissistic dynamics, what is often experienced as deep connection is emotional intensity created by inconsistency. She may share vulnerable stories early on, creating rapid emotional closeness. But true intimacy requires mutual accountability, emotional responsibility, and consistent presence. Intensity can exist without any of those. There may be passionate conversations, but also subtle manipulation. There may be tears, but no genuine repair. There may be closeness, but only when it serves her emotional needs. The man may feel deeply bonded, yet constantly unsure, and that uncertainty is mistaken for depth. When someone is slightly out of reach, when their affection feels conditional or inconsistent, desire intensifies. The mind becomes focused on winning back connection, on maintaining closeness, on not making mistakes. This effort feels meaningful. It feels like investment, but it is often driven by anxiety rather than security. Intimacy does not require constant effort to sustain affection. It allows space. It allows disagreement. It allows imperfection without threatening the bond. In intensity-based dynamics, small conflicts can feel catastrophic. Emotional withdrawal feels destabilizing. The connection feels fragile, as if it could disappear at any moment. And so the man tries harder. He confuses emotional volatility with passion. He confuses anxiety with love. He confuses longing with devotion. His confusion is understandable because the early stages of intense relationships can feel transformative. There is a sense of being chosen, of being seen in a unique way. But true intimacy is not built on being chosen during moments of emotional high. It is built on being valued consistently, even during ordinary days. Intensity thrives on contrast. Closeness followed by distance, praise followed by subtle criticism. Intimacy thrives on continuity. When a man begins to examine his own experience honestly, he may notice something important. In intense relationships, he often feels hyper-aware, alert, focused on maintaining connection. In intimate relationships, he feels relaxed, grounded, free to be imperfect. Intensity can feel like destiny. Intimacy feels like home. The tragedy for someone accustomed to unpredictability, home can initially feel unfamiliar, even dull, because it does not trigger the same emotional spikes. But what the nervous system calls excitement is not always what the heart needs for safety. Recognizing the difference between intensity and intimacy is the beginning of clarity. It allows a man to question whether what he is feeling is deep connection or activated attachment. And once that question is asked sincerely, the illusion of irresistible chemistry begins to soften, making space for a different understanding of love. One rooted not in emotional turbulence, but in steady, mutual presence.